Hello, I'm going to be talking about memories and electric shock therapy and a book by Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia, among other things. I'm currently reading her book, which is called Wishful Drinking, very witty, which she opens by talking about electroconvulsive therapy. That's electric shock therapy to you and me. That particular treatment had been recommended to cure her depression and feelings of worthlessness. And you might ask why somebody in her position would have feelings of worthlessness. And that's the awful thing about depression. Let's take a minute to think about this. I'm not condemning her in any way. As I say, depression is an illness and it can hit anyone. But I just want to point out, for reasons which I hope will become more evident later in this video, unless I lose my train of thought. Fisher went in for ECT and she's most forthright about it. She also gives a list of other people she knows about who had ECT as well. And she says she's doing this, not to shame them, it was a matter of public record. She's giving this list of ECT alumni because it made her feel better to consider that she was part of a community of others similarly afflicted. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. The thing is, I did notice that a substantial proportion of the people she names ended their lives in suicide. I'm not laughing at the fact that that's how they ended their lives, by the way. It just seemed somewhat ironic. And I'll give you the list. It's Sylvia Plath, Frances Farmer, Ernest Hemingway, Judy Garland, Bill Styron, Cole Porter, Vivian Leigh, Yves Saint Laurent, Connie Francis, Dick Cavett, Kitty Dukakis, Lou Reed. And I couldn't help but notice that of that list, which is just 12 people, 3 of them outright ended up killing themselves, and a further 2 died as a direct result of what you might call suicidal behaviours. Lou Reed and Frances Farmer, both addicted to things that were likely to give them an early death. And now, of course, we have to add Carrie Fisher herself after she died, which was cardiac arrest, but other, well, substances were found in her body, let's put it that way. So I'm not going to go into great detail about how they did what they did because it's all too sad. But, well, there's a go back to the list. 3 did themselves in and 3 killed themselves by proxy. So that doesn't sound like ECT is a terrifically successful treatment, although I do understand that it's all we have right now. So, Miss Fisher goes on to talk about her ECT treatment, and I was quite forcibly struck by her almost proud boast that the treatment had cut a swathe through her memory. Some incidents and events came back after a while, but she said that there were some that were gone forever. And she seemed almost proud of that. Apparently, one of her reasons for writing her book was an attempt to restructure her memory. She tells of putting a message onto her answer phone in which she advises callers leaving messages not only to leave their names, but also to add a short biography and some information about in what way they might be connected with her. Now, again, I want to say, if ECT is all they can do for you, then by all means have ECT. It's better to be alive. But she lost a good deal of her life and her past. And although I should imagine that wasn't the primary reason for her to take this treatment, she seems almost to have welcomed this side effect. Now, I can also imagine that some people who have terrible memories might be glad to have them blotted out. But if anyone offered me a treatment that might cure me from a debilitating illness, but which lost much of my memories, I might submit to the treatment if that's all there was, but I wouldn't be as apparently happy about it as she appears to have been. Look, it could be that she was making the best of a bad situation, but nevertheless, she expresses no regret. As I said, she seems almost proud of it. In fact, she seems to be telling everyone that this was a good thing. I haven't finished the book yet, so something might come up in later chapters. But the fact remains that in the introductory chapters, ECT is not criticised. On the contrary, she enthusiastically lists all the talented and creative people who've been treated with it. And that started me thinking about ECT in the West. Again, as I said, I am not criticising it. It's all we have right now. So that's the way it is. But you see, it made me think about a more general attitude. Those people on the list, you could say they had it all. They were successful. They lived materially good lives because they happened to be unusually talented and were rewarded for it. They were well known. They were much admired. They were popular and powerful in their fields. Of late, they would be called influencers, wouldn't they? And yet inside, they felt they were worth so little that it didn't matter if they killed themselves or if they abused their bodies to the extent that they were actually slowly poisoning themselves. And all they could think of was finding a way to escape what was going on inside their own heads, who they were. Many of them were, as I say, heavily using drugs of various sorts. Sometimes they were prescribed drugs, but more often they were alcohol or illicit substances. It appears that they were already trying to destroy their own memories long before they started on the ECT. And we are actually the sum of our memories. So when you try wiping your head, you're wiping yourself, aren't you? And it did strike me how similar this sounded to what's going on in our current society. We are, in the West, a society that has everything. We're talented, we're powerful, the rest of the world looks up to us, whatever they might say. We have much material wealth, we are rewarded for our technology and our innovation, we have much success and creative potential, and yet we don't seem to like our own memories. We're trying to mask them out with various addictions, opiates and the ephemeral pleasures of consumerism and entertainments. And we've now started somehow a sort of mass electroconvulsive therapy with violent riots in the streets and the destruction of our memories by making TV shows and films that change history for fantasy. And we trash the statues which remind us of what we were. It's all very depressing because, as I say, those people on the list Fisher gave, however much they tried to blot out their own pasts, they ended up destroying themselves. It might be worth us thinking about the way society is conducting itself right now in terms of a society that as a group has some sort of clinical depression. And maybe when we think of it like that, we can find a way to work it out. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.grannyopterix.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share, share, share.